We came down from a tree in order to become humans. In fact, our genetic ancestors are still up there. That's why we feel so well in the forest, because for the humans, the forest is home. Forest is our home. In fact, the first representation of architecture that explained Vitruvio, that was a Roman architect, was talking about the myth on the cabanon built with timber, built in a tree. I was chief architect of the city of Barcelona during 4 years, and that means that you need to have a big overview about the future of things. Because if you don't have a plan on the future, what you do is to do business as usual. Then, if you want to plan the future, you need to understand where we are coming from. And that's why I was trying to analyze when we change our model of cities. And then I found a pattern. I like the mathematics of history, that every 50 years, we have changed, since the Industrial Revolution, our global model of cities. And I want to explain you that in order to explain where we are and what we are going to do for the future. So around the 80s, 70s, we have already the Industrial Revolution happening here. And this revolution brought the use of steel, brought the use of the steam machine and so on, and then the use of guns that make obsolete the walls around the city. That's why we demolish our cities, but basically we did it because, in fact, the train with the steam machine produce a new way to move around the territory. You know that the word urbanization was invented in Barcelona, as we explained. There was the engineer, Ildefons Cerdà, that did the plan for the extension of the city of Barcelona that should be 10 times bigger than it was, that historically was only surrounded here by the walls. The interesting thing is that he's an architect, but he also wrote the general theory of urbanization. The word urbanization was invented here in Barcelona in that book published in the 1867. It was the same year when Marx published The Capital, and it was the same year where Haeckel, following the work of Darwin, coined the word ecology. So look, the word ecology, the word urbanization, and the big discussion, the big test on the history of the capital, on the future and the conditions of the working class was produced at the same time. And today, somehow we have same kind of crisis, the same kind of discussion about how we can deal about our cities connected with the environment and also taking care about the social conditions. So we have all the 19th century urbanization, we had the Chample and everything, and we know what we produce. But then we have another big crisis that was the First World War, and it was also a kind of hygienic problem with the so-called Spanish flu, that, as you know, was not coming from Spain, but in Spain was free press, and that's why everywhere in the world they call Spanish flu. It was the moment when the Bauhaus was founded. Now they are talking about the new Bauhaus, European Bauhaus. But then in the Bauhaus, the modernity in the 1920s was about the use of concrete. This is a drawing by Le Corbusier, about the development of the car industry that started with the Ford and the industrialization of production. And also, it was the moment when the segregation of neighborhoods and the monofunctional city was developed. You know that these three things that were revolutionary, were super innovative at that moment, now they are destroying the world. So that means that what at some point you imagine that is your future, at the same time you recognize that is something that is bad for yourself. So we have everything that we know here in Barcelona, Belviche. We see the many neighborhoods in the east of Europe, in Moscow, in China. Everything has been built following that modern model. We have another crisis. The next milestone was the end of modernity with the energy crisis in the 1970s and also the social crisis. The people was tired that everyone was always trying to sell the future. And then people start to think, what is our future? We should be doing about that. You know, I come from Valencia, and in Valencia we have a plan that this was the future, to make a highway into the riverbed that was full of medieval bridges. But it was only the participation of people that were really fighting in this movement in the 1960s, 1970s, where at the end this has become a park. We could find the work of Jane Jacobs from New York, stopping a highway in the middle of the Fifth Avenue and so on. And all this moment was also the moment of the urban regeneration, of coming back to the city. Barcelona was a world reference with all the urbanists in the 80s, and also Bilbao invented the Bilbao effect, no? The idea of bring a big icon to the city center, and then the tourists will come. Now we are 50 years later, so we are in these historical moments where we understand that the climate change is defining a new rules of how we should live and what is happening with our future. That's why we are here. But also, this impact from the humans to the nature also has produced the COVID-19. You remember that picture is very similar to the one that we saw in the Spanish flu. We thought that we learn, but in fact, the humans never learn. We repeat always the same mistakes. And that's why, you know, when I was chief architect, architects normally they build many things, they try to build things, but maybe my biggest project was to destroy something. Because we were discussing, and we produced that drawing explaining the Plaza de las Glorias that is nearby should be, if we want to change our cities, we need to start to do a very green, big spot in the Plaza de las Glorias that is was planned to become the city center. That's why we demolished the highway and so on. Because the vision in the long term, and that's why we talk about the biocities, the vision is that today we have cities, we have created machines for living where we import the food, we import the energy, the cities are machines of producing CO2, we bring concrete to make our buildings. The 22@ is a machine of CO2 emissions, no? You can walk how they bring emissions with the concrete that they are putting in these structures that they are doing. We use petrochemical and so on. But if we look to the nature, we can learn. And we can imagine that instead, to make cities that make CO2 emissions, we should do cities that absorb CO2. Cities where you can produce your food locally, where you use the local material, a renewable material like timber to make your buildings, and then you have a good relation with the environment as a whole. The truth, and a tree has 3 million years of history, and it has many layers of evolution. Buildings only have 10,000 years. With 1,000 more years, buildings will fly. But that means that we need really to work hard in order to think what means to be a building, what means to make a building. So that's why we came with this definition. Biocities are cities that follow the rules of the natural systems in order to promote life and biodiversity. And again, this is a strong statement for at least the next 50 years. And I want to show you some samples. So we do drawings where architects, we don't only make the Guggenheim, you know, that the titanium from the facade was coming from somewhere, and then all the materials we were happy to be global in order to do a global icon. We want to become local. We want to produce things locally because it's more resilient and it's more ecological. And more than that, we want to understand the whole flow of the material from where we harvest the material and how we design, how we manufacture things, and how we produce our building. In fact, we want to demineralize our industry of construction, and we want to re-biogilize. We want that the industry don't depend on stone, it depends on the natural systems. We say that I founded the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia with other people, and we have a research center here in Collserola, where every year we do with our students, we harvest, we do sustainable forest management. We cut some trees, because in fact the forest is growing 3% every year. And then if we don't remove some of the biomass, at the end the forest will explode. And this is what happened. Catalonia, we don't know. We have 70% of the surface as forest, and we only manage 30% of the total volume. So that's why we have fires. That's why we really don't have control of our nature. In any case, with our students every year, we do prototypes like this one, and then we cut trees, we have a show mill, we produce some CLT panels, cross-laminated timber panels, and at the end every year we do a small building where the students live for a while. During the year of the pandemic, 2020, also the city council make a declaration of climate energy. And I am very critical because administration made many declarations and very few actions. But they did something interesting. That is, they launched a competition with, to do 4 buildings where, in fact, the reduction of price give only 10% of points, and the reduction of emissions give 30%. Well, it was good. So that means that the question was how to do a building that we need to calculate not only the height of the building, but also to calculate how many emissions it had. And then we present this building with big terraces. It was called Terrazas para la Vida, Terrazas per la Vida, that with the biggest terraces, because it was exactly the year of the pandemic, with many of us were living in places with no terraces. And then, but it's not only about the building. We propose, I wrote a book, The Self-Sufficient City, some years ago, and I say, the city of the future, in the city of the future, we should bring industry back. We should make the cities productive. Then we need to produce things, we need to produce food, and we need to produce energy. And then in this building, the interesting thing is that in the ground floor will be a fab lab, an Ateneo of fabrication, where we'll use 3D printers to do things. But in the rooftop, you see, we are making a solar greenhouse that will produce a few of energy and a lot of vegetables. So this is, in fact, a picture of 3 days ago. This is the tallest timber structure in Spain. That is not only that building, but also we have in the rooftop a farm where we producing food. But it's not only about us. Many people say, oh, I am a good architect. I have a lot of conscience. And that's why I don't want to do any building anymore because we don't need more buildings. Yes, in your home. But look around the world. And then I am working in Africa. You know, Africa is in a process where more than 1 billion people will be urbanized in the next 30 years. The average age in Africa is 19 years old. They are 19 years old average. So if you make the numbers, that means that in the next 30 years, they are going to do one city like Madrid every month in the next 30 years. So we are in the middle of a huge process of urbanization because the people in Africa, they don't want to be poor. They don't want to have a street without asphalt. They want to be normal people. They look at the media, they look television, and they want to live in cities. So that's why, but the bad news is this. They are building with concrete because they think this is the way. They look to us and they say, oh, these people are using concrete. This must be good. But the incredible thing is that in Cameroon, where I am working, Cameroon is full of forests. 95% is not 70, it's 95% of the country is a forest. And you know what they use the forest, the timber for? They export to China or to Europe. They don't use timber for their construction. We sell them concrete, they sell us timber. What is incredible because they have the resources to do what we want to do. So there is a kind of misunderstanding. Here in Barcelona, we are these asphalting streets. They want to asphalt their streets because they don't have streets, in fact. That means that in the world, there is not only one wall, there are many walls. And then we, as part of the solution that we have, our commitment is not only to work for our city or our country, but is to cooperate to whoever it needs. And that's why we are doing this project. This is a school for some nuns, a religious order here in Spain. And then the interesting discussion was that I say, no, we are going to do the building with wood. And they say, yeah, good, we do with concrete. We only work with concrete in our country. I say, but your country is full of wood. So it was very hard, you know, it was very hard to convince even to the local nuns. They say, yeah, we believe in everything, we'll do with concrete. They didn't believe in wood too much. And then we did the structure in wood. We are building that school in wood. And then this was a whole process. Now all these guys are really very involved. They say, well, we are happy, we are learning. And they're much more better building it with wood than with concrete, because the concrete they know and they make every kind of mistakes. But the wood for them is new, and they are really very engaged on that. So the school, it already started, in fact, a month ago, and then we have some kids there. We are doing an incredible, someone say this looks ancestral architecture, no? That it seems to be the architecture that we forgot that it exists, no? Doing something with timber and with bricks that they are not cooked. It's just earth that is compacted. We also did a tree, because they do this education. They do something called the flow, the African flow, and then they asked us to do a tree. And then we did a tree with their own timber in order the kids can play over there. Yeah, and the girls are queens, you know. We did another project in Gabon where we were asked to do a plan for a city, one of these potential urbanization that is happening, and then we proposed to do a new form of cities, a kind of linear branched structure that can be adapted to the existing natural environment and not agree that in general the urbanization was about destroying the nature, agriculture or forest in order to make a city. So we don't want to destroy the nature in order to make cities. And then that's why our project was like this, was with timber. It was a kind of open system, producing food, producing energy, and so on. You know, the city of the future is a forest because there are only two possible futures. One of these futures we already know, because they were incredible civilization that in fact they collapse, and then if the city is abandoned, then the forest will take over. So that means that if all of us will die, Barcelona will be a forest in 100 years, with no doubt. And many other places already happen like that. Our proposal is we should change the way we make cities. We should transform the material that we use, where we produce energy, where we produce food, and then we need to transform our city into biocities. Thank you very much.